Hi, everybody. Sorry that I waved. But welcome to Social 30-1 and 30-2. Me and Mr. Kim, we're going to make some videos for you to, make sure that you can stay at home, quarantine, so you don't get the Rona, and, still get some education. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to be introducing a new unit to you. This is the unit that talks about the evolution from a society built on classical liberalism to a society that becomes more modern liberal. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. Mr. Kim is here with me.
Hi, guys.
And we're going to be doing this. It'll be short, like 5-10 minute videos, mixed with a bunch of other stuff, but hopefully this will kind of give you an introduction right now. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about a key word here, classical liberalism. Okay, so classical liberalism, as you know, it was the dominant ideology in the 18 and 1900s, right? This word, we can also just refer to this sometimes as AKA capitalism. Remember, this is an ideology that is highly individualist, and it believes that the government should be very, very limited in the economy. The government shouldn't really do anything in the economy. Every individual should act in their own best self-interest, and the economy will kind of govern itself. Okay, so when we think about classical liberalism, it's important to recognize that there's some really good things about it and there's some really bad things about it. And as we've talked about this before, we could probably name what some of these good things and bad things are. So some of the positive and some of the negative things, if you can remember, maybe you can think in your head what those might be. But some of the positive things are high levels of innovation. Just go ahead and shout them out if you know them. Innovation, industry, like industrial, like building new factories, new ideas of how to grow things and develop an economy. Another really positive thing is that people are free from government tyranny. You don't have any sort of government breathing down your neck telling you how to live your life, where to go, how to live, what to think, what to feel. This gave a lot of people like things like religious freedom. And then another really positive thing in this time was the growth of the middle class. Okay, so some of the negative things of classical liberalism, because there's no government involved here and really capitalism, like individuals acting self-interested is what's driving the economy, this caused some people to be really, really greedy. And so this caused things like labor and resource exploitation. So people weren't treated very well. There's no laws that protected laborers, and resources were being used like crazy. This also caused a rise in pollution. If I spell it wrong, you just let me know, Brian.
That's spelled wrong.
Yeah.
That says pollution.
Okay. So the rise in pollution. This also caused pollution. Okay. This also caused it also caused a large gap between the rich and poor. So there were some really, really, really rich people and some really, really poor people. And there, for those in -1, this caused a new class of like a new class system. Those that were in industry and drove the economy, those that had land and those that had the means of production were called the bourgeoisie, and those that were kind of the working class and the working poor were called the proletariat. Okay, so this system has some really good things about it, but also some really, really crappy things about it. And so classical liberalism isn't going to last a long time when you have such polar consequences of an ideology. I mean, there's going to be people that respond to this. And we talked about some of these responses last week when you were still in school. But what we're going to talk about this week is, how does classical liberalism itself evolve? Some countries, some communities, places like Canada, the United States, Great Britain, wanted to maintain capitalism while kind of evolving it to work for their system. So how do we isolate the positive things and reduce the negative things? And I hope that makes sense. So what we're going to see is, we're going to see an evolution from a classical liberal phase into what we call the modern liberal ideology, aka also known as the welfare state. Okay, so this evolution from classical liberalism to modern liberalism took place in the early 1900s in the United States of America and Canada. And then the ideas that took place here spread to the rest of the world. So what is the difference between classical liberalism and modern liberalism? Well, that's our job, to help you guys understand the difference. And what I want you to also understand is that some communities, like places like Canada, United States, Great Britain, evolved from a capitalist economy into a more of a modern liberalist economy, which still protected capitalism but had some government protection over people's welfare needs. Some countries, though, in the same time period, in the early 1900s, they rejected liberalism altogether in favor of more radical or reactionary ideologies. So an example of this, and I'll do this in red, is some countries rejected liberalism. So some countries rejected liberalism, saying, we don't want liberalism, we don't want people to be free, we're in favor of dictatorship and heavy-handed government. And they rejected it, some rejected it in favor of what was called communism, where the people took over all the land and all the resources, put together a overarching government that would share everything equally. So that was places like Russia and China, and Cuba, and Venezuela, and Vietnam, and North Korea, and I could go on. And some others rejected liberalism in favor of a return to a social hierarchy, return to a kind of a monarchy time where one group or one people ruled everyone. And that was a move to something that was called fascism. And this would include places like Italy. This would include Germany. And this would include Japan. Now, I'm going to tell you guys one last thing. For the 30-1s, this is really important you understand this general idea. And it has to do with the notion of what a social hierarchy is. So in the classical liberal phase, the question is, was a hierarchy acceptable? Was it acceptable that some people were rich and some people were poor? Well, the belief at that time was a hierarchy where some people had all the wealth and some people were more poor. This was acceptable because your state was based upon your merit. So your social position is based on merit. Does that have two T's?
One T.
One T. Is that right?
I think so.
Yes. So your social position is based upon your merit. Meaning, if you're rich, it's because you worked harder. If you're poor, it's because you sucked at working. But the thing about classical liberalism is that It says if you're poor and things aren't going well for you, that's your own fault, right? It's nobody's fault but your own. And if you want to be rich, then work harder and you can be rich, because the world is a freaking bakery. If you want more pie, go make more pie, right? That's kind of the notion. So classical liberalism or capitalism is okay with rich and poor because everything's built upon your own merit. Whereas modern liberalism would actually say that this system, some people that are in kind of the bottom half of the system, they're born disadvantaged. And so in order to create a more equal playing field for everyone, the state or the government needs to step in and provide some welfare. So the idea is, instead of having a peaked social hierarchy where the rich have everything, but there's very few of them, and the poor have nothing and there are lots of them, we would try to get rid of this system in favor, right? In favor of something that looks more like this, right? So you have large amounts of people, right, that are in the middle class. But there are also quite a few people that are in the upper or wealthy class. And you do that by providing things like social programs, government-sponsored programs. You tax the rich, give to the poor. You create universal health care, education, all those sorts of things. So that's important you understand that. Now, when we talk about fascism and communism, the difference between these two ideologies is really simple. Fascism strongly believes that a strong social hierarchy should be built, but instead of it built upon merit, so you're rich because you work harder, right? And you're poor because you work less hard. Fascism believes that there are certain people and certain ethnic groups, individuals that should be born in a position of power and others that should be not in a position of power. So your social status is built on birth. So you're born wealthy and you're born powerful, you're born in control, and some people and others aren't. So if you think about Nazi Germany, the Germans they have the right to have all the power and control in the world, whereas the Jews or other non-German people shouldn't. Okay, so it's kind of a return, if you think about it, it's kind of like a return to the monarchies of the past, where certain people were born with privilege or rights. Whereas communism believes that all forms of social hierarchy around the whole world should be rejected or removed in favor of all people being equally wealthy. So, just to recap, we're talking about the evolution from classical liberalism or capitalism to a more modern liberal state, where the state or the government becomes more involved in providing people the bare necessities of life, right? This system moves from a system that has a lot of really poor people, but some really rich people, all based upon merit. If you work harder, you're rich. If you work less hard, you're not rich. To a system that creates greater equality for all people through social programs such as healthcare and education, right? There are some governments and societies that rejected liberalism altogether in Europe and throughout the world. That would include the fascists like Italy, Germany, and Japan, who believe that your power or your wealth should come based upon your birth, kind of like the monarchies of old. So think of Germans believing that they are the rightful heirs of all things that are great in the world. And communism, which rejects liberalism in favor of perfect equality for all people. Everybody should be equal. There should be no rich, there should be no poor, and that should be worldwide. Now, just a side note before we're done, why would a communist hate a fascist? Well, because fascists strongly believe in nationalism. They believe that one country, one people should have all the power and control, whereas communism believes that all people around the world are equal, right? And so if you think about it, how much a German, right, in Nazi Germany would hate the belief that all people are equal, when in the mind of a German person, nobody's equal. Only the Germans have control over all things. Fascists and communists hate each other, even though in many ways they're similar in that they're both dictatorships. So that is kind of the introduction to this part of the course. We're going to be focusing just on the 1900s in the United States and Canada to help us understand the shift from classical to modern liberal. We'll talk about communism and fascism in more detail in the next unit. Okay, see you guys. Hope that made sense.
Bye, guys.